Those who have endured the overwhelming odor of hamburger emanating from a training partner's gi have found a new home here at the Sidewinder Network. Please do me a favor, like, subscribe, fuel the comments section with absolute ridiculousness, as well as your own personal experiences. Guys, welcome. I want to take a moment to hit on a few topics here. Today's topic is going to be one video in a series of videos where I address a few issues with the white belt campaign. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for spending time with me. I'm your host, the professor, and I want to get a few things out to you. If you're a white belt or a day one practitioner or somebody very early on into your jiu-jitsu career, I want to talk about a few things and some things that I think are very, very important here. Many times, I think the white belt campaign, these issues are not discussed until a lot farther down the pipe. So one of the first things I want to tell you to do is you're not locked into where you go. Often you get into a gym and you don't really understand the culture behind it, and you've really done very little research. You really didn't even know to do a bunch of research before stepping foot into a gym. So I'm going to break this down into generally 3 classifications that you can pretty much guarantee that a gym is going to be influenced by, or they may be somewhat of a kind of a combination of many. The first one we're going to talk about is commercial. So what is a commercial jiu-jitsu academy? Well, I want to give you some general guidelines. Now, please understand, these are probably not going to be everything, but it's something to kind of get you started. So a commercial gym is going to be that gym that is largely influenced commercially. Generally, you can look at the way they run their academy and you can kind of tell what kind of a gym it's going to be. So the first one being commercial, we're going to talk about the general overarching structure of the academy and what it might look like. This is in my experience, and guys, please be mindful of the fact that I've been in the jiu-jitsu community for over 20 years. I've seen how many gyms have run and have been organized, as well as I've operated my own for a number of years. And there's just a few things that I see that I think would help a white belt to understand whether this academy is for them or not. Number one is going to be pay structure. This is really, I'm going to piss off some people. So if you're a business owner watching this, feel free to comment with whatever argument you want to comment on. This is just the way I do this. We're a successful jiu-jitsu academy. And I want to tell you, first off, we're in the middle of a very small market. So we have a market of about 1,500 people in our little town, and we have a bunch of towns around us. So we generally have to pull from a lot of towns. So we have to be fairly adept at our marketing tactics. And also, we can't be too expensive because of our socioeconomic area that we're in. So what it might look to you, generally in white belts, I'm talking to you, what it might look to you day one when you walk in the door of a commercial academy is going to be a lot of structure. You're going to see a very nice academy. A lot of times you're going to see they're very well outfitted and they're very well equipped. And additionally, you're most likely going to see that they're an affiliate of somebody, meaning that they have a higher chain of command. And oftentimes what you find with these commercial academies is that it's somebody who started in the original academy under whoever owned that affiliation, and then they have reached a level where they felt like they wanted to step out and start their own academy, and they've sought the approval as well as they've entered into some sort of a business agreement with their sister or with their parent academy, and then they open one up on their own. That's one of the first things that you'll notice for a commercial academy. Now, going back, like I said, a lot of times these can kind of be a combination of many different things. So what should a white belt do when they walk in? If you look at it and you look at the pay structure, so the first thing you should sit down, you should look at the pay structure. Number one, you need to determine if the cost of tuition or whatever they call it there is feasible for you. Don't feel roped in. That's the most important thing about it. Often you're going to be presented with one of 2 options. Either they're going to have some sort of a month-to-month ability, meaning that they want to let you have an ability to pay month-to-month, or they're going to tell you up front that they do an annual contract, sort of like a fitness center does. Now, this is where me touching off into this subject could piss off a lot of people. And frankly, I'm not here to make friends. I'm just here to try to tell you guys exactly how you want to go about doing this. You need to second determine whether or not this is just for you or your family as well. So if it's just for you, then obviously you might have some different things to consider. But if it's for your family, then overwhelmingly, the most important fact about this is going to be how much it's going to cost. Let's just face it. Bottom line is going to be dollar and how much everything costs. So Looking at it in terms of a commercial facility, your first thing you're going to see is most likely, they're going to be on a annual plan, meaning that they want you to lock into an annual agreement. And how does that work? Well, an annual agreement is going to mean that they're going to sign you up to this contract. You're going to be in that contract for a minimum of probably a year. Some do 6 months, but most do a year. And at that point, if you decide something you need to leave, or if something changes, some sort of life changes happen, you're going to be pretty much stuck in that, because what happens on the back end is that the financing company gives the academy all that money up front, and then they're going to expect that you pay them monthly. So your agreement no longer has anything to do with the academy, and really trying to speak to the owner about any hardships you may have are going to fall largely on deaf ears, okay? So that's the first thing that you have to consider with a commercial academy. Now, the next thing that I think it's important to consider is you need to find out exactly who the coach is. So understanding the way things work within the academy is generally not going to be information that you're going to know right offhand. But what you can do to help yourself is you can find out exactly who the coaches are, and most importantly, what their rank is. Now, again, this is areas where I'm dipping a toe off into some turbulent water. Some people get pissed off. They go, well, my coach is a purple, my coach is a brown, whatever. And I'm going to steer clear of my personal thoughts and feelings on exactly how that should be done, okay? Because every gym is different. Ultimately, it's up to you as the consumer to decide if that's something you want to tolerate. If you have one of those questions about what I personally think, then what I would ask that you do is just hit me up in the comments. I'll send you an email and I'll respond to you directly, because I don't necessarily want to steer you away from what might be your only option within the community, and it might very well be a good one. I'm not going to sit here and say that purple belts are incapable of running a school. There's some world-class purple belts out there that I know. Hell, there's some blue belts that could walk in here off the street and give me a pretty good go, if not beat me. So if that's one of the guys that's running your schools, then hey, more power to them. But in general, you want to stick to the fact that it's generally going to be ran by somebody that is one of the higher belts. Okay, now purples are often included in that as well. Now, along those lines, when you start talking about instructors, what's probably most important to know is exactly what that instructor's presence is on the mat. Okay, now, again, there's some turbulent topics here that getting off into this, and we're just talking about commercial for today. We're going to talk about the other ones later on, but one of the biggest things I see from people coming from other academies and signing up with my academy is the first thing they say is, well, the black belt was never on the mat. Okay, now I think that's a very important thing. It's important to know whether there's a black belt on the mat, and it's important to know whether that person is actually on the mat. Oftentimes I hear that, a student signed up at some school, and they go, well, it was always taught by a blue belt, or it was always taught by a purple belt. The black belt who owned the school is never there. Often you even find out that there really is no black belt in the lineup whatsoever, and it's owned by like a blue belt and his wife or something like that, and they have a purple belt coming in from outside and they're teaching. Now, my thoughts on that, I will go into that. What I do see is that turbulence kind of ensues in that type of a scenario, because what you see is it's a lot of times those instructors, many times they float, or they're not set, and generally the agreement and the future of that particular academy is relatively unstable. So one of the next things that you need to look at is their tenure. How long has this academy been active and operating, and what is their history? There should be some reviews on Google for that academy. There should be a lot of just face-up information on that academy that tells you that their business operations are sound and exactly what they've had a history of doing, what their performance rating is. Additionally, you should be able to walk up to any academy that you're at, and I personally think that signs of organization are a very indicator indicator of overall professionalism. Now, when you walk into my academy, obviously I own Sidewinder Jiu-Jitsu. We're academy here in North Texas. This is not a plug for me, but this is, again, we're talking to the white belts. I personally feel that you should be able to walk up to any academy, anywhere, and you should be able, as a day one person, to ask them what your first step is. Now here we have a new member training and orientation packet that it's huge, that is available. It sits at the front. It's also available on the mats. And I have personnel entirely dedicated to walking every single one of my white belt, my day one people through this training and orientation booklet. Now, what this contains in here is proprietary. I'm not going to discuss it with any of you guys. If you have questions, at least not publicly, if you have questions, hit me up in the comments and I'll tell you exactly what this is. If you're a business owner and you have a question as to how to put this all together, please hit me up and I'm more than happy to discuss it with you. Additionally, right out front, when you first get there, you should see some sort of public standard operating procedure or rules. It should be in paper. There should be something that you see here that states exactly what the rules of this academy are. Those rules should not be unwritten. It should be something where you can step in and you can go, okay, what are the rules here? What are the do's and don'ts? Something so simple as don't step on the mats without with your shoes on, okay? Foot washing stations, all these different things. These things are very important and they should be immediately available to you. The minute that you check in, it should be one of the first things that you see. Now, additionally, for myself, we felt the need to put in a nomenclature and terminology packet. Okay, now this is a large packet. It's essentially a dictionary of front and back terminology. Now, so why did we do this? Well, because generally what we found out is the day one white belt, you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. And again, I'm still talking to you, white belts. You feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. Overload of data is one of the most dominant feeling that you're going to have when you come into an academy, especially after day one. You'll be like, I don't know what they're talking about. They have their own lingo. They have their own verbiage. Everything they say from one academy to the next, a half guard or a half butterfly could be one thing. So for us, that's called V-guard. That's the way I always did it. That was my terminology for it. And that's what my students know it as. They don't know it as half butterfly, okay? They kind of start to learn the crossover terms, but it's very, very important that you have something to settle. This is available for us in a PDF format, and I give this to all of my students, and they're able to look through this in time. Now, the cool thing about having all this stuff down in documentation, hard paperback documentation, is the students get to look at this in their own time. So you white belts, look for things like that. It's very, very important. So another thing that I'm going to touch on right here, and this is another part that could spark some debate, but I want to hit on this because I personally have very, very deep feelings on this, and it's very important to me that if you're a commercial academy, you have your stuff together, okay? Everything should be in place. You should be able to walk into that academy and see that they have things structured in a way that's not only safe for you husbands, but safe for you wives. Now, I haven't even really kind of got off into whether we're talking to male or female here, but women, I'm talking to you as well. So hopefully you see this, and do me a favor. If you're a female and you're here and you're watching this, share this with anybody else that you know that may be coming through at this time. Now, I'm gonna cover up my names here, but this is something that's hanging on the wall at my academy for all of my associate instructors or main instructors. Anybody that is on the mat for me has attended Safe Sport, and this is an online. I'll plug I'll put the link in the comments below. And I just feel that this is a good training curriculum for all the people that go through here. And it basically ultimately provides information as well to my families and my instructors if they see or hear anything, to give them an outlet, somebody to look to. Additionally, in signing up at my academy, and I think it should be the same anywhere else, is when you first sign up, there should be at least some sort of a somewhat criminal history questionnaire that's involved in that. It's known that one of the things that kind of plagues youth sports is sexual assault investigations. And me being a police officer and having been around it for years, I've always had a hard, fast stance on my opinion on running a business. And anytime you have youth there, I think that it's very, very, very important that you have some sort of a qualifying questionnaire for people walking in off of your streets, because that's how you set the tone for tolerance. Okay, so we're talking about a commercial facility. That's how you set the tone for tolerance. If you are just open for any old person coming in off the streets and sitting here, you don't know. That person could give you a fake name, and they could be a registered sexual predator, and they're sitting here watching your classes, or maybe they have a kid here and you don't even know it. Okay, so I personally think that any academy that you go to that's worth its salt should require you to show your Texas, well, for us it's Texas or any other state associated identification, and then you should have to answer those questions, because what that does is that gives the academy an idea who they're dealing with, who their people are. They could come in here and say they're so-and-so, and they're paying with a different credit card or whatever, and a lot of times companies would never know, or they're a cash payment. You would never know who it is that you're dealing with. So I personally think that in terms of procedures and organizational stuff, they should have their stuff together, okay? And additionally, another point is that I think when you start getting on the terms of instructors, we talked about the question of whether the black belt instructor was actually on the mat or whether they weren't. Very, very, very important, because ultimately if you're paying your money, however much that may be, you want to be learning from a black belt. Now, another thing to keep in mind with regards to that is most black belts, they have other jobs, they have other things going as well. So they may not be on the mat every single night, but if they're largely on the mat and they're running their academy, man, give those guys some credit because they're working hard. A lot of times what you see, something to be careful of these commercial academies is the owner the person that does the coaching? I can't stress this enough. If the owner is the one doing the coaching, that points to a future of relative stability for the students. And then when you look back and you compare that with how many years they've been in business, it generally gives you a fairly good outline of their projected success into the future. I know around DFW, it used to be a situation where pretty much the dominant black belt in the area was the one guy, and everybody pretty much spun off of this guy. But you know what? He was the academy owner and he was the academy coach. Now, a lot of times what you're seeing now, and you can argue this point with me if you want. If you're a coach and you're here, you want to get pissed that I say this, but a lot of times what we're seeing is academies are springing up on every street corner, and people are being brought in from Brazil to coach these academies, and they're doing it full time. Well, what I have seen, and this is just my personal experience, here's where the comment section is going to blow up. So blow it up. I don't care. Blow it the hell up. It's going to be awesome. I'll respond to all of them. What happens is the black belt, a lot of times a resident black belt, takes a leave of absence from the academy, and he'll fly to Brazil, or he'll just go get somebody from Brazil, a young guy from Brazil who's the next hotness, and he comes in on the mat and he's coaching the academy. Okay, here's the problem with that. That person has a general and relative disconnect to the standard philosophies of the academy, because the guy that started is not the one on the mat continuing to express those philosophies into his students. So now what you have is you have a totally different person from a different culture, from a different place. They're teaching your classes. Okay, now I'm sure we can all see the problems there, or the problems that could start there. Oftentimes, most often what the problem becomes is it becomes a business conflict with the owner of the gym and the current coach, and that points to a future of relative instability. I'm not saying all the time, but it just does sometimes. So it's something to keep in mind, okay? As a white belt, you want to know that your investment is sound into the future. We will get off into the dangers of starting one place and then gym hopping in some future videos, because I don't have time to cover all of that today. This is going to be a long series, so I hope you stick with me. The reason why you need to know this is because this costs the end user time in promotion, time in advancement, all these things. Now, people are always going to try to fry me in the comments, shouldn't be worried about belts or whatever. Well, okay, whatever. Ultimately, you all get in here and you all figure out you love the art of jiu-jitsu, you want to expand, you want to continue to move through, you want to get better, and you want to promote. That's just part of it. If you say that you don't want to promote and that it has no interest to you, one of two things: either you're a liar or you're just flat out weird, okay? That's just part of it. Everybody gets to a point where they enjoy promoting and they enjoy the relationship they have with their coach when they receive their promotion, and we'll talk about that into the future as well as a whole other series. So, on the topic of the commercial gym, these are some things that you need to keep in mind when you check out your gym. And lastly, we're going to cover atmosphere. What is the atmosphere in the gym that you go to? Is it kind of a hybrid? We were talking about two of the other parts of the general types of gyms, but generally you need to assess the atmosphere. Is it a pay my money and go? Or is it one that is generally almost like a family type atmosphere? Because a lot of times you'll find that some of these commercial gyms just have a fantastic atmosphere. And I think that those are the ones that you can't overlook, okay? When you get in there, it'll be very apparent as to what kind of an atmosphere the gym has. Now, on the topic of atmosphere, that's going to include the relationship, the general feeling that you get from the coaching staff. You need to ask yourself, how does this relationship seem like it could progress? Because in the end, it is a relationship. Now, if it's the type that just says, pay me my money and get out the door, okay, often you're going to see that those type of academies are largely and almost entirely centered around money. Everything will generally boil down to money. Now, Jiu-Jitsu academies are a business, and they have to be structured to make money. That's just a part of it. But there can exist a balance. Now, in my experience, most of the gyms that are centered commercially around, centered as largely commercial and not really generally one of the other two we'll talk about, there will be a fee for everything. There's going to be a fee for belts, meaning a belt test. And a lot of times these are going to be exorbitant. And many times the belt test is generally pretty expensive. There's generally, in my experience, because I've attended some of these gyms, now keep this in mind, I'm not just speaking out of my ass. I mean, I've seen some. There will be a fee for stripes. There will be a fee for belt tests. There will be a fee for the belt on top of that, or there's one of the three. Now, I'll tell you straight up, at my academy, the only thing I really charge for is the belt. I do charge for the belt because belts have gotten increasingly expensive, and with your 150 plus students and you have people coming through, you're belting people semi-often, but for us, the largest part of our program is the kids. And generally, if you abide by IBJJF standards, you're belting a lot of kids. And we did a P&L on ours. We realized we were losing a ton of money in just belt costs alone because initially we were not charging for belts. So we started charging the little 15 or 20 buck fee that it is just for the belts, because ultimately these things do cost money. Now, if you want to accuse me of that being a belt test fee, then you go right ahead. It's not. We're not putting a charge for belt tests, and we're also not charging for stripes or for the tape that goes with it. So if you want to say it cheapens it, go right ahead. Again, we're a business. This is where we make money. And I'm going to argue that point with you. But the point being, for those of you white belts that come in, it's very important for you to ask what the testing procedures are and exactly what you can expect moving forward. Because you generally need to know how much you're going to be expected to pay as you move through this. In many of these gyms, it can get quite expensive just to attend. And then when you start talking about progressing and promoting, it gets even more expensive. Okay, so you don't want there to be any hidden costs associated with your affiliation to the gym, okay? Generally, another thing that you need to keep in mind and you need to ask yourself, and this will be the final thing, is this an affiliate? I think we may have talked about that. It's very important to know if it's an affiliate or if it's just a general one school, or kind of what it is, because generally where that leads off into is seminars and things that you're expected to go to, and oftentimes your belt promotions are generally tied into those seminars in some form or fashion. Okay, so most of these coaches will hold off on their belt promotions until they have their coach coming in to do this big belt promotion, and then it's $75 a head or whatever the cost is. Okay, so very important for you to know moving into the future. Ideally, I think me personally coming up, I was affiliated with a gym that was more, it was based on one of the other two that we'll talk about, but it was always very much a personal interaction and relationship with my coach, who I'm still with to this day. So it's very important for me to have that. And I think that that's something that most people should want. Okay, so keeping that in mind, moving forward, I want you to watch for all these things as the day one white belt. You're on your white belt campaign, and these are the things that you need to know that are very, very important. So again, guys, thank you for your time. We're going to talk about the other two in the next few days to come. Like, subscribe, and fuel the comment section. If you have any personal questions, send them to me in email format, or get at me any way you can that's on the network page. Have a great day. We give all the thanks and blessings to God for everything that we have to this time, and much love and respect.